Welcome to the Month End, a CPG community chat. The Month End will provide emerging CPG brands real-life knowledge into the accounting, finance, and operational world. Our guests will be key stakeholders from those same brands, as well as other key contributors to the industry, which all have vast experiences and insights that will be shared with the audience. Excited to bring about episode 3 of the Month End with Chris Crowe, the head of finance and administration at Recess. Thanks for joining us today, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Chris. Recess. I don't know how many people out in the world have heard of it or saw it. It's a fast-scaling startup that's been a client of Accountfully in the market for the last couple of years. But can you explain what the Recess drink exactly is, please?
Yeah, the Recess drink is a hemp-infused sparkling water with adaptogens. And so the hemp piece is kind of the key piece of the beverage. But, the other thing that's so important is that we have multiple adaptogens, like good for you things that L-theanine, which helps your mood and relaxation, ginseng, which is, a lot of people take that's good for them. And, that's the undertone instead of it being just a regular old hemp beverage. And then we go to painstaking efforts to find the perfect flavoring ingredients and opportunities to make it a legitimate, good tasting beverage and not just a hemp forward beverage. And so that's it's our foray into the kind of good for you, mental wellness, balance your life, keep you on track kind of drink.
Yes, that's a much better explanation than what I could have done. And anybody that's out there, takearecess.com. Branding of the cans, the drink is phenomenal, and it's a very fun kind of experience when you go to their website. So with that being said, very excited to have Chris on board here to chat on some finance, accounting, and operation topics, that we focus on at the in the Month End podcast here. So kind of, I think where we want to start, Chris, is can you kind of explain what you do at Recess and kind of where your background is and where you came from, when you came into Recess, just kind of a high level there, then we'll kind of move forward in after that.
Yeah, so Recess, I run the finance group, which is really not so much a group, more really just me, and then obviously with the support of the Accountfully team. Administration is also part of my role, run the HR, and then support IT and all of that good stuff. So all things finance and admin is what I do. Joined Recess in June of 19, so I guess I'm a little past a year, which one of the early employees. It hadn't been around too much longer than that. My background is started career in Procter Gamble and did 6-7 years at all things brand finance for P&G. Had a fairly long stint in the wine industry out west. Had Heineken for a while, and then did 5 different startups in the middle of some of those things too. So part of why I joined Recess is that the startup background and then kind of the big beverage background I thought was a good combination for where Recess was in its life cycle, and so it seemed like a natural fit.
Good, yes, and I feel like when you came under Recess, the brand was super scaling and emerging within probably a year. I think probably a year post market.
Correct.
When you came on board, what did you do from a finance, accounting, or operations standpoint? Like where did you start kind of identifying, systems, processes, workflows where you can, better add value to the company or not, kind of within the first several months within Recess?
Well, I think, the head of supply chain for the company joined a couple weeks before I did. And her background, she's 25 years at KDP and was the head of supply for Buy Brands. And so when we both came in, we're very systems oriented people and are used to working in the world where that is the backdrop of anything you do. I mean, you work with data, you have reliable systems, you know how to find information and utilize that information. And so I think what Recess's challenge was when we joined, it was a bandwidth thing. It's like, you have Accountfully in place, putting together all the data, all the information, and we can find anything we need, but the internal team couldn't necessarily go do a lot with it and couldn't every decision was like, things were on fire, and you didn't have a chance to really go research and understand if you were making the right decisions when it came to cash flow. Are you making the right decisions on how you're buying materials, all that kind of stuff? And so what we tried to do specifically in the beginning is just really enhance some of the reporting that had been built internally, just some of our processes, making sure that our teams and partners we work with understood the systems and analytics that we had in place, and it was just really kind of expanding on the kind of the core that had been built by the existing Recess folks and Accountfully folks. And so that was kind of the first day, or the first, jump in and the things we wanted to do. Luckily, coming in, things were in good place. When you have a group like Accountfully already there, that was a great decision to build that partnership, because you don't have to come in and build everything from scratch. You don't have to, you're not handed a box full of stuff and says, hey, go figure out what a P&L would look like. It already existed. So for me, it was really just try to deep dive even farther and just really understand what information exists, and to build off of that, and make it even the processes even more regular than they were before.
Yeah, and thanks for the good words there. I would envision, from identifying where you jumped in at, it's kind of two major problems, or two major kind of focus items within Recess. Number one is super scaling, quick scaling company, right? Like there's challenges that comes into play of organic growth. We're going like this versus top, like straight up to the moon, which I feel like Recess was doing right at the start, like as you'd have jumped in, clearly cash flow concerns, things like that, as well as tackling the industry specific concerns around related to hemp and the regulations and everything along the way. With that, dealing with payment processors and along that kick you off their platform, that clearly a lot of other CPG brands across the nation had the same issues where, like, hey, we're CBD or hemp based, and it's impossible to get a banking relationship or a credit card relationship along the way. So I guess kind of stepping back on those two things, how did you kind of tackle, let's go number one, in terms of like, what is your experience, or what did you think some kind of good talking points are related to kind of super scaling quick companies around cash flow, things like that. And then after that, we'll get into the kind of the industry specific items.
Well, yeah, a lot of those things it's are critical for any company that's up and running, let alone how challenging you are from a legality and regulatory place. And so, yeah, establishing the banking relationships, making sure you understand, how you're going to get paid, making sure you know where your next fundraise might be coming from, or how those funds are getting used. All those things are critical for everybody. I mean, for us, it was. You mentioned there's some early challenges in there that, people would, a payment processor would jump on board, and then 3 weeks would pass and someone in legal would go, no, you can't work with them. And so, but that is, I guess from my prior world, I'm used to the complexities of how you actually link all of those things to make the process work, as opposed to can you even do it? So, a lot of those things, were early day struggles. It's, I looked at, I guess, it worked out well in the beginning that we were able to form a strong banking relationship that is, that really helped kind of guide some of the decisions we were making. And when it came to the rapid scale and the rapid move forward. And then, having our relationship with Chase in place was a big deal on that front, but it's, that was a big win for us, I would say. I don't know that answered the question very well.
Oh yeah, no, I think it does. So I guess a takeaway for the folks that are in kind of this industry, or kind of growing and trying to figure out how to navigate that, just from the banking payment processing standpoint, would be developing a good relationship with the bank and trying to be very forthright and understanding of like what industry that you're in and what you're planning on doing, and seeing if they can be a long-term partner versus jumping banking relationships and credit card processors and things like that.
Yeah, the relationship management piece of it's huge. I mean, it's, everyone wants your business. I mean, emerging brands, as soon as they see you're successful in some form, everyone comes to you. And so trying to figure out who the actual long-term partner is going to be and what they can do for you, as opposed to, oh, great, you can get me a way to write checks and to collect payments. That's not necessarily enough. I mean, these are, as we've seen, time goes on, your bank ends up being a group that can, point you towards PPP loans and can, help establish other credit relationships and, get relationships with people that are beverage specific or your industry specific stuff. And so that one's always a big deal. And, it's almost from the finance perspective, it's one of those critical relationships. I don't want to say it's not as critical as your sales relationships and things like that, but, they all interweave in a way that you need to take them seriously and make sure that you find the right partners for yourselves.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Moving on to kind of sales channels. So when Recess launched, 100% focused on e-com, direct to consumer on their website. Over time, that's changed, but can you kind of give a little background of kind of where you guys sell, and kind of over on top of that, kind of what's a strategy moving forward of your sales channels, distribution, e-com, things like that, please.
Well, in the beverage world, the typical model is you want to go out and get really strong distributor partners, and so that's really where we started first. Early on, like you mentioned, we started with e-com, but it wasn't 3 to 4 months after we started the company that formed a good relationship with with the preeminent distributor in New York City, which is our base. As we continued to grow throughout the year last year, it was really figuring out what markets we wanted to be in and who those partners wanted to be. But distributors know their markets better than anybody, and so partner with the right folks. They know what accounts to go after. They know how to manage those accounts, support those accounts, and it is legitimate partnerships. That's really primary channel number one. Sometimes folks want to work direct, and so have retailers out there who don't go through distributor models, and you work with them directly. And so that direct retailer piece is another area we go after. You'll see us in vitamin shops all over the country, and Vitamin Shop is someone who came to us and was very interested in what we could do. The e-com piece you mentioned, that's obviously a critical area for any emerging brand to be thinking about, because right now more and more people are shopping at home, but e-com to me is a huge leader in so many ways, and it tells you where your consumer base exists. And so I may not know that the folks in Dallas love Recess, but if all of a sudden you got hundreds of orders of coming there, now I start to know I might need a distributor partner there long term. Mm-hmm. And then we also have a D2B piece that we do a lot with. You say you run a gym in Phoenix, and the only way to get the product, you can't order a pallet full of product, but you do want 6 cases. And so we have a wholesale platform that allows you to come directly to us instead of going to a store and trying to buy it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's it's interesting just to see the last 6 months since COVID started, the change in consumer behavior, and clearly people buying online, having delivered items delivered to their house or things like that, and clearly that's not going to stop. Even if we get back to normal society, that's not going to stop. So understanding that and making sure that your brand is set up for that success, even if you're in, drinks as you are, where it's not as easy to ship them versus just pure, package or products along the way. So that's good. Do you guys have specific metrics that you look at within each sales channel? Or I guess, how do you look at each sales channel differently? Do you look at it at each type of business, or is like a separate division? Like, how do you kind of manage that internally and report on those items?
We obviously want to look at a macro level first. Being so new, we have revenue targets that we try to hit on a monthly basis, and we don't get too hung up on specific targets for each channel. That said, e-com specifically, we're looking very closely at the number of clicks that come through and how much conversion's happening from X amount of visitors. All of the individual incentives and things we run, we're very we will very much deep dive how that turned out and what was successful and what was not. On the distributor side of things, it's number of accounts, how quickly we're selling through those accounts. I'd say the most important metric we go after is just what our velocities are in accounts, mm-hmm. because that actually tells the story. And so if my velocities are phenomenal in Chicago, that story might play in when we go to Austin, when we go to Los Angeles, whatever the market is. And so that one's a critical one for us. D2B is really kind of a growth model. It's, every month it seems a little bigger than before it. And we're just now starting to figure out how we talk to those consumers, have an outbound relationship with them more than inbound relationship. So for that one, we're in our infancy stages of learning. And then the last one, the retail, kind of the direct retail piece. It's like, that one we haven't really too deep on just yet, because we still have some obstacles in who we can sell to and where we can sell. And so that one is more, if the partner is willing to look at us and that's, talk with us, that's great. But it also, our perspective, we've had to be kind of slow down some of the very specific metrics we might've looked at over the last 6 months or so, because if you get hung up on the number of accounts you're in a given market, that changed dramatically in the last few months. And so it's like, I might focus less on the accounts and more on the velocities and go, okay, where I am still placed, it's still rocking and rolling. And so it's like, so now get back to the accounts you were in, replicate those to same kind of environments. And so those are some of the big focus areas for each of the channels.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. That's kind of where, when we work with clients that are especially in multi, channels as you are, helping them understand and segregate the kind of segment the reporting by each, because each is a separate little business entity and has its own, sales focus and sales challenges, as well as key metrics to look at along the way. Ecom, you have higher gross margins, but you're going to have to probably spend more on advertising to get that buyer in the door. You need to focus on more lifetime value of those specific consumers, whereas distribution, number of stores, velocity, turn, and really impacting them. So really segmenting them and understanding the goals and the focus, and I think the KPIs review at each of those sales channels helps kind of basically be able to make better decisions for your business along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, when someone who's only been around for, a year and a half, 2 years or so, you kind of have to reassess every month, what exactly was the metric that you're after, because they're so rapidly changing. And so you take as much data as you've got and just try to figure out what your story was and why it worked and how you either replicate it or flip it on its ear so you can, learn from what you didn't do exactly the right way.
Definitely. That's some good knowledge there. From kind of a, supply chain complexity, clearly like from you guys' industry specifically and jurisdictions and all that type of stuff, the regulations you need to follow. I'm sure dealing with kind of that supply chain selection and decision over time, it brings about even more challenges than a traditional just CPG company that's, launching a granola bar or things like that, right? That it is a little less challenging in terms of, kind of where you guys started from with that and the decisions you made and trying to vertically integrate your supply chain, kind of how has that worked out, and kind of like what are kind of some of the decisions or challenges you kind of, come up against with that?
From where we were to where in the beginning to where we are now is drastically different. Early on, it's like we were struggling to figure out how we can even afford hemp, because it is, we're very proud of the ingredients that go into the can. And, we wanted to make sure we had a perfect formulation. And so part of that is the quality needs to be through the roof. And when the quality is, top tier, you're going to pay for it. Now, what ends up happening is there was such a, production of hemp that changed the pricing model. And now there's a surplus everywhere. So we no longer have to worry, the hemp discussion has kind of worked in our favor a little bit more, because it's still working with the same supplier, but the supplier is a little bit more lenient, a little more flexible on price, which is a good thing. The other side of it, though, is that as the more specific we've gotten about ingredients and flavors, the fewer options we have to buy from. And so if I have a very specific, we have a very specific organic cherry that we want to work with, there aren't 20 people out there selling it. There are only a couple. And so you're a little constrained on how much you can negotiate on price and, on where you can shift to, because you don't have a ton of options when you're, a food ingredient like that, unless you're willing to, change and just put a little less quality in the can. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's kind of the latest and greatest thing that's weird, and it's been in the news a fair bit, is like there's an aluminum shortage going on all around us. And so finding cans has not been easy. And if your one package has an ingredient or your one package has some sort of material that you can't just readily get everywhere, you kind of have a little bit of a challenge on a production basis on when that happens. And so those are kind of the, when we're beginning, it was, things were readily available other than just expensive. And now it's a little bit more, we're very specific. We're very, you have to have a certain packaging and that kind of stuff, which I imagine a lot of folks do as they learned, from consumer feedback and just what's working, what's not working. Your package evolves, your flavor, your ingredients evolve, and you get to a fine-tuned form. But if there's any risk to any of those ingredients and packaging, it can be tough on you.
Yeah. And then in terms of, buying inventory, right? So we're talking about velocity, turns, distribution, getting a direct to business model, direct to consumer, all this type of stuff. How do you plan inventory purchases? Like, how do you plan on manufacturing, sourcing, all that type of stuff? Clearly, there's a ton of things going on, as we discussed with COVID and shortages with aluminum cans and the different things that have gone on just from a regulation standpoint or quarantine standpoint. But how do you guys kind of in normal world or even kind of whatever right now manage that kind of purchasing, cash flow outlay purchasing kind of plan?
Luckily, one of the good things about the beverage world, especially particularly when you're working with distributors, is that it's one large order. And so it doesn't come to you from 75 different retailers. And so it's one big order that says these are the 6 pallets we need, and this is the timeline that has to happen. So demand planning can be, is fairly predictable in this world so far anyway, the way our model's set up. So we don't have a lot of risk to that, to where we're constantly running around trying to figure out how we're going to build something. We don't sit on a lot of inventory. I mean, because we have, one big order comes in, and if it happens in a month, you've got 3-4 distributors order, it's pretty easy to figure out how to source that and plan that. It's not just in time planning, but at the same time, it's the order, I give you a demand plan for the next month, or, we build that thing out, and we build towards that, but we're still small enough that we don't have to build, months in advance. We're never carrying a lot of inventory. Ingredients are kind of when we, on the spot, when we know that we're going to be doing a run, that's when I'd order ingredients, and the lead times are, fairly short, and they get it turned around pretty quickly. So that plays kind of into the cash flow picture. You don't have to, you're not thinking about orders 3 months in advance, because it's like the turnover of our sales kind of refreshes what we would need to buy for the next month. So you're not really ever thinking about, okay, how am I going to come up with the cash for this, because this order is going to be for 700,000 cans. We're not necessarily in that state. So that's a problem I don't have to deal with just yet. Now, I hope I do very soon. But right now it's a pretty repeatable process where we set up line time in 2-3 weeks, and, all of the ingredients and stuff arrives a week beforehand, and wash, rinse, repeat. So.
Good stuff on that one. In terms of kind of systems you use to kind of manage inventory, or your inventory kind of process, purchase, sales, fulfillment, I know you guys use Deere inventory with that. Is there any specific kind of recommendations or needs within systems that you'd recommend for, emerging brands or emerging startups to kind of be ahead of the game, right? Because we can do this manual and spreadsheets and reports, or move into a kind of an inventory system that kind of helps us kind of pull data and have more precision around COGS or inventory values and locations along the way. Is there a kind of, from your experience, kind of any kind of best practices within that realm?
I think what we find, I can't recommend Deere enough. It's been perfect for our size of the business. It's, I'm used to the SAPs and JD Edwards and stuff of the world like that, but Deere has been fantastic. And what we get out of it more than anything is it gives you a very strong view from when the material came in-house to when you actually sold the product, and anything in between. So at any given time, I can go in and legitimately see how things are flowing along, and where things might be short. You can watch all the transactions of, the ins and outs of all things e-com, and when our large orders get shipped, and it's a really good snapshot of anything in the process, or anything in the actual inventory build process. Materials management, it's great. I really appreciate the way that the system works, as far as keeping track of what we've got on hand. And luckily, all of our stuff basically lives in one place, so I don't have the complexity of 15 different warehouses. But it's a great tracking tool, and just a very simple, cloud-based, something easy to manipulate, and a wealth of information. So I 100% would, any up-and-comer that is looking for something better than, manual spreadsheet entry, that's a great entry place to start.
Yeah, that's when we were researching different systems and things like that, from a user experience, from a cost standpoint, from a just overall integration with, the Shopify's of the world, the Amazon's the world, where the majority of CPG brands reside, QuickBooks on the, of the world. Like, it was like, God, this is a really good fit. And we've really enjoyed, the aspect of that. Clearly there's a lot of other inventory systems out there, but, just for, I think, a lot of emerging brands don't really know that there's these types of systems out there that can help them run their business and manage their inventory, right? Like, your biggest outflow and your biggest resource as an emerging, basically CPG brand, $0 to $3 million of annual revenue, $4 million of annual revenue, is inventory, managing inventory. So when clients come to us, it's like, hey, let's do a supply chain inventory walkthrough. Where is the inventory at? Let's do a bill of materials. Let's help understand what your landed costs are. Let's get a process in place to count inventory. Clearly, all this type of stuff kind of can be facilitated through de-inventory or a system like that. But walking through that and understanding those items first can help you be like, okay, this is what this means from an inventory standpoint. And then on top of that, how do I start counting inventory, understanding where I have it? Because constantly with us, a lot of our clients, we have $30,000 variances, $10,000 variances, $50,000 variances, and some of it's just pure timing issues, just variance issues, et cetera. But it helps people understanding that this is a core focus of your business. Yep. And if you don't lose any, or have to write off any inventory or just constantly have variances or don't know where your inventory is at, you're literally just throwing money out the door. And so it comes in to manage that, when to buy it, when to manufacture it. So having those systems in place really, really helps. And clearly, you say you have a great operations kind of team member in house that helps out with that. There's a lot of ops I know you guys to start out with used Rodeo as an ops partner, which is, Rodeo, cities of the world are there to help out as well. So I can't explain enough to people of the focus on inventory that, the control of inventory, the management of inventory is really key to the success of a startup brand.
Absolutely. Well said. And I mean, the other little thing that it does that, when you've got systems like this in place, it makes your close and your financials process so much easier because you have accurate, reliable data and problem solving, and even, problem solving past problems or, from related to something you might have inputted incorrectly or didn't track the right way versus, and, it's how you build forecasts. And yep. So it's when you start, it truly allows you to start thinking ahead because it a great system of record of what you're learning every single day that you're using it. So.
Yes, well said as well, Chris. Well, I think we're nearing the end of this, so I'd love to kind of get one do and one don't from you, Chris. So let's focus on a kind of a do and a don't for some for CPG brands that are $0 to $3 million, startup emerging brands. What's a do or a recommendation that you would provide to them?
Take all of the legal and regulatory challenges that may exist. Make sure you understand them backwards and forwards. I'll use our beverage as an example. Understanding labeling requirements by state, understanding your packaging rules and, your do's and don'ts of ingredients and what claims you can make and can't make, where you can sell, where you can't sell. It's like understanding all of the things that might slow you down is a critical thing. And I think a lot of folks just, they go gung-ho on what that product's going to be or that service is going to be, and they don't necessarily know, what all the local rules, state rules, federal rules are and what they can and can't say and do. And so just making sure that you really investigate and understand that is a critical piece of the business, and one of those that we have learned over and over and over again. But, that would be the do. The don't, kind of what we were just talking about, don't underestimate systems and processes like that. It's, we all live in an Excel world way too much, and it's much easier to build a spreadsheet and manage that kind of yourself and make sure that you got, what's in, what's out and all of those things. When you get out of that spreadsheet world and get more into the DEAR world and, proper ERPs and, support teams like, strong teams like Accountfully, and you get those, systems and support in place, it's like the access to information and the usability of that information goes through the roof. And so that's the quickest way in my mind to get from that 0 to 3 million is just everybody has the opportunity to actually do the insights on the data that you've got. And so those would be the things. Don't shortchange that because they're not cheap. All these things cost money, but they pay themselves back so quickly.
Awesome. Those are some great recommendations on both sides of the aisle there. So kind of as we wrap up here again, Chris Crowe, Head of Finance and Administration at Recess. Thanks again. Recess has what, 6 flavors? Is that right, Chris?
6 flavors. Yes, sir.
Any new ones on the horizon or any other exciting things on the horizon?
There's lots of exciting things on the horizon. So stay tuned. There's some fun stuff coming in Q4 here. So
yeah, I bet. And for everybody, you can go to visit Recess at takearecess.com. We'll have it linked up in the show notes with all the social media follow-ups and everything, but definitely check them out. They're definitely a I think we're going to see a lot of recess in the short term and long term future of just consumer shopping and everything. The brand is great, the flavor's great, the team's great, etc. So once again, Chris, we really appreciate your time, and hope everybody enjoyed episode 3 of the month end. Have a good day.